parachute today, or?
Accepted my appointment. Oh, are you loose? Yeah.
Great. Welcome everyone to the Thursday, April 7th Brewery District Commission meeting. Our next monthly business meeting will be at noon on Thursday, April 21st in this same room, correct? And our next commission hearing will be 4 p.m. Thursday, May 5th in this same room. Can we swear in the staff, please? I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Connie Torbeck, Assistant Historic Preservation.
Thank you. Roll call.
Here. Stay your name.
William Hugus here. Oh,
There we are, Puranik here.
William Hugus here.
Cynthia Hunt here.
Jeffrey Pagana.
Patrice Allen Brady.
Leisure.
Thank you. Great. Matt wants to get his own microphone to the party. Okay. What's first, Connie? Can we has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from last month? Yes. Any omissions, corrections, errors, etc.? No?
Nope.
Can I have a motion to approve those minutes for our record?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Motion passes. All those in favor, I do this in the wrong order every time. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Anything in the public forum or anything to mention before we get started?
No, I'll just say, we skipped staff approvals because there were no staff approvals this month.
It's interesting. It seems like that doesn't happen very often.
He's on vacation.
No, is that what it was? No, interesting. Okay, so do we want to start off here with our continued application first, Connie? This is BD 22-03-006.
Yes, 1025 South High Street.
Yep, come on up. Good afternoon.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. State your name for the record, please.
Tarek Abdesalam.
Great. And just swear you in. Do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was continued from last month in the absence of the applicant. To remove the chain link fence that's completed and retain the existing 6-foot-high wood privacy fence and the 1-foot-3-inch high stone retaining wall and brick sidewalk as installed prior to review and approval. Stone is Ottawa rustic 2 to 3-inch and pavers are built past 560. At the March 24th business meeting, the commission requested a plan for plantings and landscaping, noting that those would be important as for staying in paint color. And previously in March, the discussion was that the materials were of high quality. The fence height seemed high overall with the sidewalk and fence. The fence should be stained, make it less obtrusive. It was noted that the wall and fence face the side street and plantings in front of the fence might make it less obtrusive. And again, work was begun prior to review and approval. I'm not going to read this entire thing here, but Department of Public Service Infrastructure Management has been on site and they have approved the work. Noting that it may have to be removed in the future if there's any improvements to the street. The material utilized in the project are appropriate. There are concerns about the height of a solid fence facing onto the street. However, based on additional photos submitted by the owner since the March hearing, showing the view from the rear yard looking south toward Eshore Avenue, staff recommends approval of all work for this particular site based on the surrounding environment, specifically a large parking lot across the street. Any future privacy fences proposed along side streets of the properties to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. And and that staff recommends approval. It's submitted as noted, and just wanted to say the reason for that, CC 3116.13, standards for site improvement, refers to the overall, considering the overall environment as far as landscaping.
Okay,
I'd like to
so,
say, first, I apologize for not getting the certificate before doing the work. I didn't know, but going forward, I will
okay, thank
do
you.
it the proper way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I appreciate you guys understanding the parking lot across the street, and that's the reason we're seeking privacy. People tend to sit in that parking lot. Why? Sit their cars there, and so.
understood. I live across the street from a park. I see the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
Don't need to know what they're doing. Okay, so I think just to sort of get to it, we made a few recommendations. Staining, adding landscape. Any thoughts about that?
It will be staying.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Perhaps to swear him in.
I did.
You did, you did?
Yep.
And also, I forgot to say, I'm still on vacation,
That's okay, me too.
that he has submitted the planting, an example of the plantings. We do have that, just, and hasn't decided on the stain color yet.
Can we see the planting? I'm a little confused by it. What's the intent here?
They are pencil Japanese hollies. It's what we've come up with, but we're open to suggestions.
So where are you gonna put those?
Between the wall and the fence. Right.
What kind of spacing? Right.
We're thinking 7, so it's 40-foot span, so it's that 5-foot spacing, 5-6-foot spacing. Probably similar to that picture, but shows.
I was thinking something lower that would sort of make it feel as though the fence was not really on the street. But I am not the landscape architect in the room. We have two
That's right.
landscape architects in the room.
Matt, what do you think?
So are you gonna trim these or are they just gonna grow upright?
Keep them shorter than the fence.
Yeah, I think maybe you could go a little tighter with the spacing, but if they're lower than the top of the fence, I think that makes sense. That would be.
But if there's any plants or shrubs you think would be better. Or totally.
Are you thinking that it's maybe something a little rounder, maybe something that looks a little bit more like a low hedge? So you're sort of building up
That's
from,
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that gives the step up to the
Right.
fence from
If you
the
don't want-
sidewalk.
These guys will just make the fence look taller.
Yeah.
And you don't want to emphasize that. We want to bring it down to the
Right.
pedestrian scale.
Yeah.
so maybe it could just be a round holly, although a holly might start to get big there, Matt.
Yeah, you'd have to stay on top of trimming it, so.
To be honest, I would be happy with any like evergreen or quasi evergreen thing that like stays around 3 feet plus or minus. I don't even think you need to fully hide the fence in terms of spacing. I think we just want to create a little bit of
Something to,
wedding cake layering, if I'm hearing you.
Rude.
yeah.
Correct.
Rude.
Yeah,
So 3 feet or less, 3-4 feet.
yeah.
tops.
And we could name off all kinds of evergreens. It could be a taxus or a boxwood or some sort of, other evergreen like a juniper or canacyparis or whatever.
Yeah.
It could be a broadleaf evergreen like a low viburnum or I think there's a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, like to jot those down if possible.
Yeah.
It'll be on the YouTube.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, there you go. So what about color? Connie? Are we gonna stain it or? are we not
Yeah,
gonna stain it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we want to paint the whole house, which we'll run that by you guys
Okay.
as well. And we want to wait till we figure out that before we pick a stain.
What's your timing on the house being?
Sure. Yeah, don't really have a timeline on that. Maybe this summer, next summer, following summer.
Our general guideline is that fences are to be painted within
Oh.
a year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
Same with an opaque stain.
Yeah,
And you
well,
do need to let it dry out before you stain it anyway.
Right.
So,
yeah, we'll definitely stain this one. We'll pick a color as well and run it by you guys.
So is everyone, Connie, are you going to approve that? Do you need our input here? I don't feel like you need my input.
No, I mean, I think we kind of do, the issue just is that in general, at this point, we did used to do it this way, but we got into some trouble with people not ever submitting colors. So we require people to submit a color before we issue the COA now. So you're gonna have to pick a color before I issue your COA.
Oh, okay. Right now.
Not right now, just, within the next few weeks or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
But do we all have a sense for what that's going to look like? Is it a dark stain, a light stain? Are you guys, we need to do anything else here? Otherwise, I think we can get.
What are you?
I imagine be a natural stain color, not far on one end of the spectrum than the other.
And this is natural the way it is right now?
Yeah.
Generally, we would require something that does not show the knots or the grain of wood
So maybe we shouldn't be using the word stain. We should be using the word paint.
or opaque stain.
That's what I just did on mine,
Oh, pig.
opaque stain.
Never heard of that.
It's just darker so that I think it basically, I guess, stain will peel and stuff also. But I think maybe less so than paint.
Okay.
But it's still gonna,
I would probably stay away from the cream trim color on your house.
right, something dark.
It's too light, something darker. It also provides contrast to the evergreen shrubs that you have in front of it,
Mhm.
so it'll look nicer.
Yeah, if it's darker, it will recede into the background more. So,
Yeah, okay.
That was one of our conversations in an earlier meeting.
Yeah, about the obtrusiveness.
Landscaping this season, correct? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Then the next week or two.
A little darker than natural.
Yeah.
You'll work with Connie on it.
Will do. Understood.
And can you be a little bit more explicit on the spacing then? I guess it depends on what
The plan too.
the plan is.
Say 3 to 4 feet probably
Apart.
would be a good.
So 3 to 4 feet high, 3 to 4 feet apart.
Sure.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
Anything else, or can I ask for a motion?
Make a motion to approve with the conditions that we just discussed.
So the two conditions are plant type and stain. And you will go back to Connie for both of those. Good with that?
And
Yep.
submit the type of plan.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
and we appreciate your recognition of the opportunity the next time.
Yes.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
Great. All right, let's have a vote here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so Connie, next.
Yeah, we're okay with, I've talked to them all, from both fine with, going with, number 4, or
Doing
number
separate.
4 first.
Okay, so we're going to do a little rotation on the agenda here since I'll be recusing anyways. I can get out of everyone else's hair. So that is 841, 843 South Front Street, is that right?
Yes.
Number 4?
That's separate, yeah.
Yeah. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Blue.
Hi, can I have your names for the record, please?
Jim Maniaci. And I'm John Hyman with MA Architects.
Thank you, and swear you in. Do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Connie, where are we at?
Okay. Some order, because I didn't stay long. So this project has to do with 3 different buildings, or 5 different buildings altogether. This particular review is focusing on the issue of demolition, renovation of 66 to 68 Whittier for the new construction at 841 South Front. March business meeting, comments included that the Applicant had stated the site plan is noted to be an existing condition site plan showing applicant's constraints of retaining historic building and is not a proposed site plan. Commission is requested to have the scope of work clarified. If the site, historic Italian house could be split, and they wanted clarification on public services position. Proposed project includes partial demolition, the north wall and roof of the circa 1917 contributing warehouse building, complete demolition of the associated contributing brick garage, complete demolition of the circa 1880 contributing brick house, and complete demolition of the associated non-contributing rear decks and concrete block garage. Staff opposes demolition of the two-story brick section of the house at 835 South Front Street. It is a contributing building, providing a buffer between an existing 1.5-story brick cottage and the proposed new project, which includes described as market rate apartments. The applicant states that preserving the entire house is economically unfeasible due in part to the condition of the rear additions, but the commission has not opposed demo of the rear additions. Approval of any partial or complete demolition requires, quote, definite plans for reuse of the site, and quote, prior to approval of demolition. That's 3116.14. The commission has recently expressed regret for approving demolition at another project site before reviewing or approving a final plan replacement. And to support an argument of economic hardship, additional information would be required, including things such as amount paid for property, detailed cost comparison of work proposed by applicants, and any alternative consistent with architectural standards and guidelines, and with income expenses and income taxes. They also have mentioned individual compelling circumstances. The information submitted generally appears to refer back to economics also. In regard to the vacated section of Whittier Street, traffic management's comments on a site plan not showing access from Front Street, where the brick garage is now located. Their comments were due to being located within the signalized intersection of South Front Street and West Whittier Street, the formal connection for vehicular access to this location will not be permitted from that storm maintenance connection. That's the section of Whittier Street on the south side.
So the south side of the
Yeah,
property.
they are not allowed. Hence our requirement to only access through Bank Street. And the reason they said that was because they never saw a site plan with any that you have seen that has ingress, I guess, and egress from the universities. But I had showed them. So, and from after I showed that it is the planning division's understanding that DPS Department of Public Service has not yet reviewed a site plan showing any other particular entry exit on Front Street, and DPS would need to provide comments on any currently proposed site plan. It is also our understanding that DPS would not support vehicular access from Front Street to this location. And I say that based on the fact showed them the site plans that we have seen at this point. So this is still conceptual. Well, they would like action, but it's still conceptual. So you would provide comments. No action required unless you take.
I'm sorry, I think I got lost in the last thing about the park, about the access.
Okay.
So you didn't show them, they haven't seen the Front Street.
Yeah, the only thing that, tell me if I'm wrong, is that the team, the project team has submitted a site plan to DPS,
Right.
but it did not show any access.
It did not show the Front Street.
Yeah, it did not.
Okay.
It didn't show this at all. All right, what they commented on was this, they said, no, do not use that.
Right. Right.
And so I was a little confused at first.
I was too. So that's
Until
why
it showed me.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, well, this is what we have seen.
They haven't seen it.
And
So do we know
I
their
was saying that they will have to comment on any of the site plan. But after I showed them this, I asked them and they said, this is just me repeating something. It's not their formal comment.
Right.
Said that they would not.
They would not support the Front Street entrance?
Correct.
Even though it's technically existing, We'd be shifting it,
And I-
right?
and
Is
I
that
would
correct?
say-
You'd be shifting it around a little bit.
What,
Now, so this is, can I speak for a second?
yeah, can I ask one more question, John? So, because I think you're gonna have more information than anyone in the room. Connie, are you saying, and I apologize if you said this already, that access in and out of the building from Front Street, DPS would not support and,
Informally.
okay, that's fine. And they would not support access in and out of the alley. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, on the back, on the side.
This.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay, I call that an alley.
You can come from the north.
They have already commented on this.
That's a no-go.
This they have just commented to me.
Informally, they suggested that's not a good place for a curb cut. Off the record or informally, however you want to describe it.
And they're
Okay.
pushing the banks, the north entry from banks.
Okay.
Sounds.
Sorry, John, I just wanted
It's
to
okay, no.
go for it.
Clarification.
Are we ready for?
I should probably sworn in.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Randy. Do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good thing.
Now we've got to. Okay. Thank you, Randy. All right, Connie, anything else or can we hand it over to the applicant?
Okay.
All right.
This is a disclaimer a little bit. I don't think we've ever submitted anything to the Public Service Department. Now, we've been working on this project for yeah, it's quite possible. We've been working on this for off and on for like 3 or 4 years. My job number is a 2017 job number, so we did have a civil engineer put together a preliminary site compliance plan, but that never got submitted, so that might have been part of the conversation. So
Yeah,
regardless, nothing formally has been submitted.
okay.
Like a site compliance.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
It also would be helpful for them to do that. Because it's kind of putting the cart before the horse for you guys to look at something if DPS is not going to
Yeah.
allow. You know.
Would definitely have an,
We can have that information.
it'd definitely be useful information to understand.
We did have the one-stop shop meeting where we got everybody together, all the public services. That might have been where that
I
meeting
think
was
that's
discussed as well.
That's-
So
Okay.
that's a couple of years ago, but yeah, we did go through that process.
At that time, at the one-stop shop meeting, John, what was your understanding of your access to the building or to the site?
There was never a comment about the existing curb cut to the north on front. There was definitely restriction on the curb cut to the south of the building.
Yeah,
And there's issues with the Bank Street. We have access to it, but there's just existing condition issues.
yeah. And just to remind me, is it just that it needs to be repaid?
It needs to be repaved, is one part of it. There's huge erosion control, so there's stormwater issues there. But most importantly is that lot to the north is where the width of the right of way is 40 feet. On the south side of that property, it goes to 20 feet. So without our access to that site, we don't have access to the 40-foot right of way.
Access to the rear part of the site.
To Bank Street. Yeah, so.
So access to the rear part of that site, not the full site. Without your access to the rear part of that site.
Well, we always have access to it because there is a 20-foot right of way that is on that side of the building, the west side. But it goes from 20 to 40
Oh, it goes from 20 to 40.
at the, if I can point,
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
That'd be great.
Okay, I mean, just like big picture here, part of what's in my mind, John, is like, let's say we go forward with this project. This is a whole boatload of units. We should be improving the alley back there somehow, some way. If there's a dimensional issue, that's different. But in terms of the infrastructure to deal with the site, we got to put in new power and new stormwater and so on. So if we need to repave an alley, let's repave an alley. And I'm not suggesting that that's the entire issue, but that's about as simple as my thinking.
Yes.
If the pavement needs repaved, let's repave it.
the sport is awesome. But here you can see right here, which is at that property line, it goes from 40 down to 20. So if we don't have access back to this, then we don't have access to this section of the 40-foot site plan.
And by access, go ahead.
Access exiting or ingress.
You mean a driveway that goes east-west along that entire highlighted red area?
Right. Our garage would be exiting out this side right here, which is the high side split, everything just keeps following this way. So that was where we were going to access as well as here. So the garage kind of becomes a drive through in some sense, just the parking underneath where it's just access there. There's right now existing there's a loading dock right here. So we can just basically maintain the same slope. We're able to marry it up back here. Now, there's some grade conditions here for sure. There's one of the pictures here that I sent. Well, we can kind of take a look at that in a minute. But the site issue is also related to this grade in terms of just what we have to do to preserve this if we were to do so. Because it really requires a retaining wall 100% of the length of the property from here to here to hold this grade up where it needs to be. Because we've got to have a wider road here. This is just one way right now, going to the backwards way. So in order for us to preserve this section of the warehouse, this part here, we have to widen out to the north. We don't have anywhere else to go.
But again, remind me, the red is where the historic house is, the property lot.
This is shaded area is that lot.
Right.
Yes.
And you're talking about the back end of that lot to widen.
Well, I'm sorry, that's doing, I'm
The
sorry.
back end of that lot could be used to widen. You don't have to have the whole lot to make Bank Street work.
Well, that's what our proposal is.
I understand that. I'm saying there's a possible alternative view.
Well, we've looked at
I know you don't love it. I read your comments. I just wanted to.
the frame that's right here. You know, there's a power pole right here that's gonna have to be. This grade condition is really serious, so we're gonna have to do a fair amount of work in this area to be able to exit and ingress right out this way.
Right.
So there's, I mean, we don't have access to anything on this side. That's privately held by the developer to the north.
And John, I mean, effectively, is that alley that goes southward essentially, for all intents and purposes, useless because,
I mean, pedestrian wise, you know.
well, that's not
We're allowed to be able to use this, even if we were able to kind of come around the building this way. Like one of our earlier schemes, we actually had the garage exiting out this way and going around. But the fact that we just don't have access to it, even though it is public right away. Can't use it. And maybe we can clarify that through the site compliance process. You know, what they said in that initial meeting was you can't use the curb cut.
yeah, but they didn't say you can't use the alley to circulate
We
on
didn't
site.
have that level. We didn't
Yeah, okay.
grind down to the.
But your bigger point is that there's not 2 lanes worth of east-west travel there to serve the site.
Right, so we're cut off.
But you can cut off most, or a lot of that, it's maybe off, what, like, not all of it's gonna be gone. All gonna be cleared off. Section.
As one alternative.
Well, yeah, I think that,
We looked at that as an alternative.
isn't the issue, John, that you need 24 feet or 22 feet right here, right, straight through?
Right.
So
If we're gonna keep that brick wall.
keep
So,
the,
and keep the brick.
On the warehouse.
yeah, right, that's what I mean. So assume that you're trying to keep that, right? And forget about this, yes or no. The point is you need 2 lanes of east-west travel. That's what the site plan's currently asking for. Is that just?
Assuming it's two-way travel.
We don't have a choice.
And assuming DPS would allow that at all. What they have told me is that they won't. So that's why I think we need to get that clarified before, otherwise this is a moot discussion.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just trying to understand the
Yeah.
lay of the earth here, because I think John and his team understand this a lot more than
And
we
they
do.
have, and it's going to have a preferred option and you're describing that.
Yeah, I just, well, no, I'm not describing, I'm
Well,
trying
you're trying to understand.
I'm trying to understand the function that they need.
Right.
Right, so, and the point of that, John, is this is not 24 feet. It's 25. Okay, so there is enough room there to go.
25 feet. That's to the existing, that's.
Building to face to building face.
Yeah,
It's not so big, nice.
Yeah, we can be switched on.
So if this is
So-
25 feet and you need between 22 and 24 for a driveway,
we can, the issue is that whether we have to expand to them. We have to put our driveway in here. If we're gonna keep this wall, we can't go that way.
right?
Yeah.
So if we're doing that, then we have to have this retaining wall that comes all the way down from side.
Which would be a new retaining wall that you would have to build? Is that what we're talking about?
It's a deep slope.
So we looked at saving it. So one of the pictures that start to see right here, but this original house is really square.
Yeah, it's small.
It was on. So we looked at doing something like this and taking the site, it actually adds more retaining wall because you just turn the site crashing out here. This site is.
So you're doing, I was, it's a great point, John. Regardless, you're taking this topo signature and you're putting it here or here or here. You're moving it either way, right? You're probably adding some.
It's all cut. There's no circle.
Okay, well, but in an end, but it's dealing with the same drain condition, whether it's here.
Yeah, because we would have to come here and do that, because all of this grade has to work together. This side, it can't remain hot.
Yeah, I think we generally understand the dimension.
But that's assuming in two ways,
That's what it's up to.
as opposed to one way, if we,
So what,
depending on what the other review says and the options we presented.
so I think, John, am I hearing you right? Meaning that you could come into the site from Front Street potentially
Right.
and exit the site from the alley and up to the north.
Right. Say it again.
Only ingress from Front Street. By the way, we're not suggesting Connie is wrong about her comment with DES, but come into the site from Front Street, exit the site from the alley, and then up
Bank Street,
Say that again?
Bank Street.
From Bank Street,
Using Bank Street.
yeah. So you have one way in from the east and one way out from the west.
I mean, in this condition, we still have this issue we have to deal with. So great, whether it's 2 lanes or 1 lane, it doesn't change the site conditions.
But don't you have to deal with that under all circumstances? That's what I'm confused with.
Well, in our proposed situation, earlier.
Yeah,
back
right.
to the building before this, our building was coming up to that. And the
You were in and
building-
out.
Building itself was acting as the retaining wall.
Got it. You were in and out up front. In that case.
Right.
But this is about more, John, than building a retaining wall, right? The retaining wall we can afford with the project.
Well, really, I mean, there's issues, there's some pictures in here. The condition right here up against this existing house is fairly difficult because of where the existing house is and where the retaining wall would need to be. And go down into the basement of the existing house, and there's pictures of that as well. It's just all rubble. It's all seriously eroded, from just years of the water infiltration that's just happened because of lack of maintenance and so on and so forth. So you really are gonna end up having to rebuild at least that wall, if not part of the. Because once you start disrupting that ground and pulling out the garage, and trying to put new structure in there with deep foundation and all that, you're gonna mess up that foundation. So there's some serious work there that has to be done. That all just goes in the ground. To preserve.
Yeah, let me just.
This is
make
Chicago.
sure I understand this. So this, I'm just pointing to this, by the way, you guys aren't missing anything. So
Yeah, that's in there's one in 4. You kind of go through.
this is what you're trying to get a 2-lane drive.
Right.
Not existing wall. There is enough room in there.
If we put the retaining wall.
Right.
You mean
Today.
it is?
It's 26 feet from here to here. 25 feet. We need 20, 22, 24.
But that's the point is today. Drive lane just right here.
No, I understand, but we have
That's the, yeah.
with you, I get that. Okay. So, is anyone else, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty more to talk about. Can I just ask?
There's some of these pictures just so.
Yeah, go ahead. I was gonna ask one thing in the meantime. If you want to start the images over. Connie, so they're here for demolition. But in this packet, I don't see a plan.
Well, it was in the original.
Okay, so I assume we can bring that up.
If you wanted them to review something, it should have been submitted with your full application.
Well, okay, let's step back for a second. So we did submit that previously and we got good comment back from everybody regarding the intent of saving the warehouse and the temporary building and so on and so forth. So we felt we got a fairly good green light on that direction. So this site issue and this parcel on the house is the issue that needs.
So you're not asking for feedback, on anything but the site issue?
Well, the
If
purpose
you
of-
are not asking for a demolition now, it's conceptual, because you know we're not going to get a demolition award early without seeing everything together.
correct, and we actually put that in writing. So what the purpose of this meeting is to basically get an agreement in writing that we're approved to demolition these various structures in the future after we get all the appropriate approvals.
I'm really having
The
trouble.
code does not allow that.
Okay, well, that's
It's not.
Why would that not be allowed?
I'm just going to say, I'm really having trouble because I don't think we've done our due diligence with the other organization, where we have to sit down and really talk about the various meetings and make sure that they agree with the path that we are proposing.
And that being the city departments, is that
Yeah.
what you're referring to?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the reality is, we don't really have a path that we know they will accept. And we have, and you guys know a lot more now than you knew at that time, when you had the conversation with them before. So you can actually explore other alternatives to them that we didn't probably know about before. Is that fair?
Kind of. We have explored this quite a bit. As I mentioned earlier, we have had civil engineer involved going through
We
this.
don't have something written from them saying, these are the things that they will honor or accept. That needs to
I'd
happen.
have to go back and see if.
Given where we are,
Balance to that.
with Connie socializing the idea, I get this informal, it doesn't feel like we have a viable option.
Well, I didn't pull that back out for the record. I'm sure.
I'm not being critical. I hope
No,
you
I
know.
understand.
I think you guys have done a great job. I know you're
Yeah.
trying hard, so don't take my comments in a
Yeah.
negative way.
No, I get it.
Okay,
There are probably meeting minutes from the one-stop shop meeting because they all distribute comments. That's the whole purpose of that meeting.
right.
I did not go back to our files to look at that, so I could certainly do that and see what comments were in there. I'm not recalling any comment about the access on Front Street.
We all still love the idea of the south. Perhaps you don't use the curb cut, but you can use it as a right of way. So I haven't given up on that either yet. And improving the Bank Street behind. So I just feel like we don't have, especially given that Connie said that the socialization didn't provoke a widely positive response of things as they looked off of Front Street. That makes me really nervous. I feel like what she said was when she socialized the Front Street and entrance and exit, they said no. Now, it was informal, but that doesn't make me feel real good about trying to help you come to a decision about what's the best thing for this site. Because I don't think we know their opinion yet.
Fair, I understand that. We don't have anything formal other than what comments.
And I don't think we've explored all the things you now know in a way that you didn't know as much at the time you talked.
Yeah, I think
We talked a
to,
lot.
if I were gonna rephrase that, I think we would
Please
say,
feel free to.
we have a, well, no,
Yeah.
just for me, we don't have a site plan that the Brewery District Commission, Connie, departments in the city, and you all agree is a site plan to move forward with. So there's some general hesitation to move forward with demolition since we don't have a site plan that we know.
I will never say it.
Well, that's what we've been struggling with, to be honest, because we've approached it from the standpoint, we need to get to some level of understanding with our proposal
Yeah,
before we go through all of these other steps with other people. So we're trying to get.
Preliminary, like they sent me the site plan, the only site plan that they have seen, which showed no access from front. This project.
Any plan that we've had ever has always had access on the street.
The site plan that they sent me did not have that. So,
I don't know where that came from.
so anyway, I just feel strongly too that it should be clarified. And would you like for me to read the code?
well, I mean, John, I think you see the issue of approving a site plan
Yeah.
and demolition is where we're a little caught up.
Well, I think,
If we want to read the code into the record,
and you guys have your opinion, that's all that matters, right?
Well-
Because you're gonna set the rules.
Code
No, I
well.
We have to pay attention to code.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I think we're trying to remove opinion
Yeah.
from where we're at right now and be respectful of the code. So can I suggest that we let John go through his presentation, let the public speak, and then regroup our thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that, John.
Yeah, and I probably made a mistake, because I apologize, because, we've submitted the site plan previously with the other concept plans.
Sure.
And I assumed that this was all kind of like a rolling conversation, as opposed to submitting the full package each time, so.
You do have to submit a full package. We don't go back and figure out what you might want the commission to see.
Okay. Well, going back to that site plan, the purpose of putting that site plan together was to show what some of the main issues are in trying to preserve that house to the north, because that's really what it all comes down to.
Sure.
I mean, there's a connector here, this little warehouse thing, block that I think I could assume that that would have to come down as a part of that retention area. The old garage piece, and I think all of this other stuff that's listed as not contributing. So other structures and all. So this whole conversation really does boil around to that one small original structure of a house. And so the purpose of this was to point out the degree of difficulty in trying to preserve that site in connection, in addition to preserving the warehouse footprint as it is. Because that fixes our footprint on our building. So that predetermines the conditions that we've got to deal with on the site. So that was the purpose of that, as well as showing the circulation issues that we've got up here in terms of don't have access to this in the sense that we have to retain it, and we don't have access to that 40-foot right of way. So just physically and literally, there's just a lot of restrictions on the site. Everything is being asked. So that's why we're trying to get to the point of the one house and the issue of taking it down. So some of the other things just going through here, the other slides. This is just a letter. These are just some of the pictures that I took, on site. This is showing that great condition with the barn that are come down, the telephone pole that I mentioned in there. You can kind of see the ridge line right here where it all starts to fall off to the side there. So either way, there's a big site condition that has to be dealt with down at that corner. And it's off this property line is where that 40-foot right of way comes. Next one. This is the north side, northwest corner. This is where that addition was, and I think everybody can agree, or at least I'll speak for myself, it was important to build. And it's just got a lot of water infiltration issues. And it almost looks like that structure was just kind of built next to the original house, because it's actually separated away. You go inside this building, and the floors and the walls, it's just not a crack. It's actually the entire structure is shifting.
But this is one of the additions, right?
Mhm.
Not contributing additions?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can just in the next picture there. This is that backside that is being used as homeless shelter at the moment, potentially. But it is an issue that the developer has to deal with on a daily basis. This is the south side where the existing structure pit is here, where that addition was. You can kind of see just the rubble rock stuff that's being used as a pseudo foundation here. When they did this addition, they tried to tooth it together, which was a mistake.
So on the right is the existing historic structure. On the left is an addition of some era. Got it.
Yeah. This is the condition that we have between the two structures. And there's another picture here that shows the other side up in the corner, where this is literally serving as a retaining wall right now for this little walkway that goes in here. And it's this wall of the existing and this corner that's got serious water damage down in the.
So on the left is the garage in that 25-foot zone that I keep pointing to, like a dog on a bone for some reason. Yeah. And on the right is the historic
Yes.
house. I'm just saying that for myself. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
And then you can see this goes all the way there. It's a little hard to see in these pictures, but this is just all serious erosion. You can see the shale rocks. And somebody put this up years ago to kind of.
What building is that?
That's the back of the garage on the.
That's part of the addition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever it's called, before it's contributed.
That's the very back of the property.
Or, I'm sorry, very
Yeah.
back of, yes.
Yeah, that whole side here. You look closely at it, all the way down there before you get to the house. It's just seriously.
Okay.
This is the south condition of the existing garage. That sidewalk is between the two structures right there. But you can see how this is serving as a retaining wall right now. So as soon as we pull this away and expose this, we've got serious concerns and issues that we have to deal with on that the existing foundation of the existing building. Just because it's literally rocks of about the size, just all mudded together. You can see where there's been streams of water coming down on the inside of the years. It's just eroded. So we would have to probably rebuild the foundation wall from the inside, since we probably work on the outside, and then rebuild it on the inside. And then build a retaining wall. So the amount of efforts that's going into the ground from a financial resource standpoint is pretty significant. Potentially with one structure. So pictures, this is the foundation wall. That's the steps coming in, so this is the south wall. So what they did when they did the addition, they literally just kind of took some of the rock out that was on the foundation, put it back that way, and that's just all ground. That's the addition. And that's partly what's causing that erosion. All the stuff around the perimeter of the house is just gone pretty much. It's just exposing the rubble rock. That's what all the first can see in. So that's everything. It's a little hard to see. I drew a line down here originally, but it was hard to kind of pick a corner. But this eyeball from here to here, you can see how far out this whole wall is going. It's like the brick is falling off of the house. A lot of the lintels. And this is the letter where we just formally trying to state the purpose of this. And I understand the legalities of committing, but maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe it's a level of understanding. Because we obviously want to move forward, and this one structure is the one issue that is unresolved.
Not the non-contributing part, just the contributing.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what we were hoping for today, was, to get that similar green light, at least from an understanding standpoint, that, we can proceed forward with the project as proposed and do all of the appropriate things in terms of getting in front of the city, so that there's a compliance plan, starting to ball on all of those issues.
Okay. Any other initial comments?
No.
Can I
Questions from you guys?
commission either pass it over, questions to John, or pass it over to the public?
Public, because I look at
Okay, so I have 4 slips here. Maybe I can swear everyone in at the same time if you'd like to speak. 4 speakers, can you stand up? Promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's start with, are you gonna tell me how to operate? Is it Mark or Mary?
It's Mark, but I'm going to allow the Landmarks Foundation to go first if they'd like.
Oh, okay.
That's okay with you.
Becky West. Hi, Becky. Can you just restate your name for the record, please?
Happy to. I'm
Yeah.
Becky West, Executive Director of Columbus Landmarks. I think I may be loud.
Well, I think we just want you to get connected to our live
Sure, it's
stream.
recorded. It's for the YouTube.
So much.
Thank you.
Columbus Landmarks is a nonprofit that advocates for historic preservation and design excellence. And we think it's a wonderful opportunity for both at this site. We want to thank the city, the Brewery District Commission, and the development team for this thoughtful approach to this wonderful Jones Heel manufacturing site. This is not my first visit here regarding this project. And I come today with 2 recommendations. The first is for the development team. And I believe you have heard this before from the commission, but I will reiterate that the Italianate house remains valuable architecture. We do encourage the adaptive reuse of it within the redevelopment. We'd love to see it used as the leasing office. The integrity of masonry buildings should not ever be underestimated. This one is a key contributor to the rhythm of the block, and it would help to create an appropriate transition to the new construction. And for the commission, we recommend you request a careful preservation plan to stabilize the warehouse structure walls as part of the approved documents. This is very important because, as you may know, with the new mixed-use development in King and High recently, the walls that were to be preserved failed during demolition. That's all I have today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky. Do you all have a preference in the order you'd like to come up? Hi there, could you just state your name for the record, please?
Vicki Diesner.
Thank you.
I live at 824 South Front Street.
Great.
43206, right on that block.
Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished members of the Brewery District Commission, I'm Vicki Diesner, and I was attracted to buy in this neighborhood based on the preservation of these distinguished buildings. I've appreciated seeing neighbors buy and move into this historic area in our neighborhood, and with vision and work turn old structures into a work of art from a past time. That is the charm, personality, and environment of this district. I believe that the old shoe manufacturing property should be restored as a whole, with the flat building potentially being a swimming pool for the complex and community. Just needed to throw that idea in. And the house being an office for management. If the developer would follow such a vision, it would be the shining star in the community for preservation. You know, I did move in there largely because of the assurance that was given to property owners in the southern tier of the Brewery District where I am, by the Brewery District Plan and by the establishment of the Brewery District Architectural Review Commission. I've been on landmark hikes, learning about the history of our many pocket communities of Columbus, but was most impressed about the history of my own neighborhood, which I didn't know among those facts. Being maybe the oldest neighborhood in the city, I believe we need to do everything we can to preserve that history and integrity of the community. So for the aforementioned reasons, I respectfully urge the Brewery District Commission to require the preservation of the house associated with the development property that was formerly a historic shoe manufacturer in the city of Columbus. We thank you for your time, your thoughtful consideration of all aspects of the community's opinion, and we thank the developers for all the work they've done on this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next. Hi.
I'm Susan Freed, and my husband and I have the house at 836 South Front Street.
Can you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry.
I'm Susan Freed, and my husband and I have the house at 836 South Front Street, which is across the street from the property in question. And we have owned it for over 25 years. We put our heart and soul into renovating it, $250,000, and we love the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood. And we were relying, of course, on the Brewery District Plan as we look forward to our retirement years there and being able, to enjoy the neighborhood. And we understand there will be change, but we're encouraging you to save the masonry structures. They're beautiful, and I spent a lot of years living in Dublin in a newer neighborhood, and you just can't build these old houses. They're anymore. You have to save the ones that are there, and it's beautiful. And I just wanted to say, I hope we can find a way to save it, and that's what happens when you try to develop in a historic area. It's expensive to work with an old property and save it. Shoot, but it's better to save the old. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mark Allison. I live at 837 South Wall Street. It's essentially half a block from this property. I know it quite well. I've done a lot of business with the Shell scenic studios that were in there, and I've been all over the building. And I hate to say it, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I could have bought that warehouse many years ago for $175,000. And I thought, where could I get that kind of cash? But I've lived in the brewery district since 1982. And I was, in fact, on the steering committee that wrote the brewery district plan, and later served as the first chairman of the brewery district commission, 3 years. Without going over and over ground that's already been covered, I would like to bring you back to the brewery district guidelines. And in particular, I ask you to look at section 1, design considerations, page 14, where we talk about scale and about rhythm. The photos that have been shown to you do not address the larger scale of this block. We see photos of the house from some distance, I might add, but not the block itself. And I would ask you all to go down there and take a look at what I would call the bookend effect of that house, as it would end the row of structures from Casa Street to the alley that is between the garage and the subject warehouse. Now, nobody is going to shed tears over the loss of that warehouse. I would argue that it's contributing, but it could be let go for the sake of the development. I don't believe that that's the case on the existing house. It serves as a taller structure that will transition the smaller structures that are to its north and make as a nice bookend or a sweep upward. And this is where what is referred to as rhythm in the guide. This is what you need where you meld these structures. If you bring a large glass structure up against 831 South Front, which is the building immediately north, it is going to be abrupt and ugly. And we can't afford that down there. We have, if you look, and I actually have photos, which I'd be glad to share with you. I think it's not permitted, if I'm not mistaken, for the public to submit photos.
You could submit them to me and I could,
Well, I'd like to. I have them on my computer. I can give them to you yet today.
Let me just also tell you, we have all visited the site. Most of us have visited the site.
Okay, well then.
We're familiar with the neighborhood.
Are you familiar with the small alcove that leads into the doorway, the side doorway at 831? It's right up against this
Right.
property proposed for demolition.
Right.
We'll lose that beautiful little niche there that you see so often in historic cities like Boston or New York, where people have made their way back to the rear of the building and have adorned that alleyway so that they can enjoy the ingress and egress. And I would urge you to consider again this transition. I don't believe, and I said it during my time on the commission, that developers who buy historic properties should then be able to complain or claim hardship because historic structures are on them and they're protected by these laws. So I ask you to consider that, consider scale, consider harmony in deciding on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Allison, could I ask you to clarify something? You said that you didn't think there would be any interior shed or something like that over the warehouse. Did you need a
I
garage?
said over the garage. I believe I said over the
You said
garage.
It's a warehouse, you can close this. yeah.
Yes, the garage is probably 1920s style,
Right.
similar to the buildings that we let go down at the Grange
Right.
property. Same brick, 1920s rough, string cut.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
But the house itself is actually in much, much better shape than is shown on these properties. It is rather shabbily adorned by some homebrew additions that were added by a man named Williams, who then sold it to Shell Scenic. He had a couple of sons who fancied themselves as engineers, and they added that stuff on, the barn and the like. That could go, certainly. But the house, the brick joints are all very good. Foundation, I've been down there. Some pointing,
Thank you.
be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, thoughts? Cynthia, I think you
Yeah,
carved out some
definitely.
space
Definitely
before.
want to talk, but I don't want to be the only one, as usual. No surprise to you guys, I haven't changed my position, which is that we want to save the historic property. I don't care about the non-contributing properties. I am uncomfortable, and yet I understand the dilemma. I'm uncomfortable without really knowing what the options are, and would encourage a conversation with, I forget the city department, public service. Looking at all of the choices, because you, I think, understand the commission, at least represented by this commissioner, has strong preferences for some of the choices that are out there as far as the egress access issues. And my least option, preferred option is the one where everybody's in and out Front Street, we'll tear down the historic house. So it feels like if we could go have a real conversation with them, talk about what the choices are, see which choices they would be open to, it would be helpful for me to make an effective decision. I have to say, though, you guys have been incredibly responsive, incredibly helpful, and we appreciate that very much. I know you're trying to do the right thing. And we appreciate your willingness to take on this project, because we know it's a hard one.
It's a hard project. Probably one of the harder ones we've seen.
I can run down the list of things. So, one, I think putting units in the tower is awesome. So long overdue. So appreciate that. I think, good with the facade approach. I think for the warehouse, I think that makes sense. Good with the 100 units. I think that's good to go, in my opinion. I think the 0.67 or your parking ratio is reasonable for this site. So I think that's fair. I think the 5 stories is fair for the site in the kind of massing that you were showing. I think if you were to go to another floor and save the house, as we talked about, and kind of disguise that massing somehow, I think I would be supportive of that personally. And then I think, frankly, the access off Front Street isn't great for the project. I think you've got a garage on your main facade, so I'd rather see it on Bank Street anyway. I think that would be better for pedestrian safety. I think it'd be better for your aesthetics. I think the wayfinding back to that would not be too much of an issue. And I think you could make that alley improvement, and I don't think that's far off, I guess, is my consideration. And I think if we could see a site plan with some contours or something that helps us understand the grading issues, that would be helpful for the next go around.
Thoughts? No? Thoughts?
I agree with both previous speakers. I do think that the 2-story brick house needs to be saved. You haven't even come close to proving it can't be repaired.
Good point.
I've seen this basement stair condition a gazillion times in German Village. It's not atypical, it's definitely repairable. I think the house suffers from delayed maintenance by neglect over the years. But I think that the 2-story section of the those historic part of the house really needs to be saved for itself and also for a transition into the taller structure you're proposing. That's a pretty big giveaway from us from day one to allow 5 and or 6 stories on a corner where there's a 1-story warehouse. I think that's a pretty big give for a historic district. The other structures that you're proposing removing, I have no problem with at all. I do think you need to get back to the city right away, people, and get access clarified. We need to have that information.
I completely agree. I think without that context, it would be really hard to give you any good recommendations forward. So I think the access is the biggest issue for me.
You know, one of the things that strikes me here is that we have this huge access issue, John, even if the city will give you front street access. I think Matt's right. It's not ideal for the project or the neighborhood. And we can argue whether that's right or wrong. But what strikes me is that incrementally over time, especially with the Brewer's Gate project next door, we've been improving these streets down here on the grid. And Bank Street is like 150 feet away from being improved and a public infrastructure access point to your project. And I know you're sitting there saying, yeah, thanks, Jeff. I know that. The reason I'm saying that is that, you know, right now there's a project going on that connects Short Street to Sycamore Street by Langstone, which I know you've been to. So that connection, which has always been sort of a
Problem.
a challenge or
Opportunity waiting to be met.
yeah, so I don't think anyone ever really understood, Randy, you know this connection really well, whether that's Langstone's ground or not. Here's the point I'm making. We all, this body, approved UIRF funds, urban infrastructure relief funds, that each one of these neighborhoods in the city gets access to improve Short and Sycamore. And that's not going to do anything for the historic character of the neighborhood or, you know, do any of the stuff that we're talking about today. But it does create a meaningful connection. It's money that the city has allocated for public projects that we suggested could be a meaningful improvement to a street. And I just wonder if, John, part of your challenge could be solved here by working with the city to see if there's some UIRF money to improve Bank Street to connect to what clearly is not just a brewery district improvement, this warehouse finally being renovated, but, you know, a gateway to the Whittier Peninsula, good for the city in general. It seems like that would be a good use of some funding and solve a problem for you. So I know that's maybe kind of a helicopter solution to, or free of detail, like, well, Jeff, but it seems like that's sitting there waiting for improvement, and your project is the catalyst to ask for some help or assistance, whether it's right away, ground, dollars to improve that street and connect to this resource.
Yeah, I would say the same thing for the old Whittier right of way. I mean, even if you don't touch that as part of your project, it's kind of an odd situation to have.
You mean this thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Who knows what the future of that thing is? But
Right.
clearly the city has a stance that, I mean, we can't really argue with that. That's not a,
Right,
that's not a thing that we can use. So
it's just an odd site condition in front of a brand new project. So if there's some funding that could be, come about to,
I think it's fair to say that we support your
right.
You guys are just sitting, having a conversation and
So I don't know if that's helpful or not. I think we recognize your challenge developing these 2 historic warehouse buildings, your challenges with the existing buildings on the site, but also this almost outsized site planning issue. I think the commission just wants some resolution on that before I think before anyone would commit to anything. But I don't want to put my words in someone else's mouth.
Is there a way of addressing that need to the city from the commission, the letter?
I think,
And I think there may be power
Yeah.
in that. So
I think if we have a guest comment here.
I want to say that there has been a substantial amount of activity in Bank Street between Kossuth and Whittier recently. And I don't know whether it's been the city that's been active back there or whether.
Railroad access, who knows?
No, it's not railroad. But there has been gravel, sand, mortar, a bunch of stuff piled up back there. I would imagine that the owners of those properties whose backs are toward Bank Street would be delighted to join you in petitioning the city for improvements to that.
My thought was, do you think I would think there might be value in the commission asking a letter for directing it to Connie so that it could open the door to get the discussion with
We can have a
people that are
discussion
cheap.
about that.
I mean, I think
If
you guys are
money
the,
gets on the
you
development.
guys are the applicant. I think we can put up, we can all say it on the record right now. I would support Bank Street being improved somehow, some way. I think you guys can make that submittal and in good faith say that,
To me, again, I would have to discuss it with my supervisor and so forth. To me, it almost seems like a little bit of a conflict of interest, as though you're part of this project.
I don't think that we want to write a letter. I think this is, well, okay, maybe we would. I'm not sure really.
I think it
We
is.
need to discuss it to see if it's.
Yeah, it's an infrastructure, to your point earlier. But
Yeah,
The reality
Also
is,
fine
public
saying-
service is a different
yeah,
department.
I'm also fine saying, the whole commission has to agree and Connie's gotta be okay with
Sure.
organization. But I think you should feel, based on what I'm seeing, comfortable that we're all in support. We're on the record saying that.
Where I'm getting is just, it's a matter of getting a meeting with someone of authority in public service.
And
well, I mean,
who I
John, how much does this project cost? How many units is it? 100?
100.
So what is it, $25 million
A
project?
little bit more than that, you get the renovation, you gotta add stairs, we gotta refurbish the elevator. we gotta
Okay,
shut
30.
a lot of-
So the city, I mean,
These issues that we've been talking about on that one site, that could be a $2 million ticket right there.
which one's too, what do you think's too?
Retaining wall and all the grade and restructuring that existing house that's there. I mean, if you're talking 200 linear feet of retaining wall, that's on the average 10 feet tall. It's very.
Yeah.
Your point is the city will pay attention to.
Well, I think, Randy, I think if we've got a $30 million project here and the Brewery District Commission supports the concept,
Yeah.
I think we can,
There has been some preliminary conversations with the city through the developer in most cases, I can't speak for all, the ones that I've experienced too, is when there are off-site improvements that are required in a public right of way, typically that cost gets borne by the developer. Now, if there's funds that are available, that we can go after neighborhood funds, those kind of things, we'll certainly look into it.
yeah, I'm not suggesting the city's gonna just write you a check.
Yeah.
I'm telling you how we were successful with Short and Sycamore.
Yeah. No, I
And maybe that pot of money has some change left in it.
Yeah, there are buckets like that around, and we just gotta kind of dig for them.
I mean, at the very least, if it's still a street, it should be on a repaving schedule somewhere. I mean, let's just be honest.
I
Is
think
it
the
a street or not?
The gentleman's comment about the dirt and everything, I think that it's those property owners that are putting dirt back there to make that wider because they use it for parking.
Well, there's all manner. It could also be the stone yard behind. I don't. Anyway, we agree that improvement to that would make lots of people happy.
So I think, just, in general, I hope that, that everybody, conservation people here and the neighbors here, that, the intent with the development, also the amount of existing conditions that are being retained, which is all of the brick warehouse walls, all that are visible anyway. And the tower building, to the west and refurbishing that and getting that back to life. The whole story about the adaptive reuse and conversions and all those.
We totally appreciate that.
Increased tax
And
base.
you recognize it.
Advantage to the city.
Yeah, applaud you.
I appreciate that, I guess my point where I was going is there are thresholds for every project.
Right.
And,
understand that.
the amount that's being preserved, it gets hard to do everything. Make it all work.
Okay, so that was a conceptual review. Connie, how would you suggest we end our review today?
There's no more comments and it's no action taken. You say that you don't feel comfortable.
Sounds like we're gonna get it.
Pardon me?
We were hoping for action, but it doesn't sound like we're gonna get it. But that's okay. We understand.
So with that statement, I will just.
You just help them.
Yeah. Standard for demolition, CC 3116.14. If seeking to demolish an entire structure or major portion thereof, the applicant shall also submit definite plans for reuse on the other side, evidence of commitment for funding for the new project, time frame for project initiation and completion, and an assessment of the effect such plans will have on the character and integrity of the listed property. I've always interpreted that to be that demolition cannot be approved until there is a plan that the commission goes and can approve.
And please, we have no argument or different impression. We were asked by, to address demolition issues here at the conceptual phase. So we're not prepared with like the economic argument.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just trying to talk.
You are hearing from this commission apparently that we all tend to agree the two-story section should be preserved, but the rest of it could go, including the 20s garage.
We just have to figure out if we can make that work. That's the tough.
Is it appropriate for me to ask a question?
Of course.
In that city ordinance or in city code that's there, we responded to some of the questions that were in there in terms of making a case for demolition. So where do you draw the line is what I'm trying to understand, because I agree 100% anything can be refurbished, renovated.
So
But for
under
the
economic hardship.
Mhm.
So then you would go to 3116.08 and the ones that I referred to in the staff report, which you have. B1, documented evidence to show economic hardship, and I stated some of those just briefly. The amount paid for the property, the owner's tax returns, the comparison of what this project would cost as opposed to the way in your preferred alternative to doing it the way that the commission is saying. There's several things in there, so that's what
Could I ask, would it be your preference that we go to that detail in a conceptual review? Because I mean, obviously with conceptual review would be, in a framework to authorize a demolition, but we could, if you want us to present that information, if it's helpful, we will. How procedurally would it be your preference? For us to present that?
That could come in the form of a conceptual review or your next visit with us. Sure.
and we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I think Connie can help you figure out administratively how to do that. I think,
One thing I could just say, one thing that has maybe been lacking is that from the very beginning of this project, you said that you have met with the city. But we're also the city. And we suggested in the beginning that the team meet with us, and that never took place. So since that step was sort of missed, I think we've kind of been struggling along places that.
When you say meet with us, you meet with the staff?
With HPO staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So maybe we
understand.
could have clarified a few things, and that's in the past, but just, for future projects, maybe thinking, that's what we're here for. We're, preservation. We all have master's degrees in historical preservation. We worked in the offices for 16, 20 years. So that's kind of what we're here for. You can help, get a better start, I think, sometimes through projects. If people utilize it.
I guess I think that is a requirement to do the demolition, to consider the demolition. So you're right in that regard. I'm not a fan of demolition. I've made that clear. I'm much more hung up on we don't have the city lined up on how to do the traffic flow in and around the building. And I don't think that's been explored. No harm, no foul. Early, when you had your conversations before, I think we know a lot more. I think there are a lot more options. I would really want to see, we have to have that feedback. And it has to be more than we took them what we want and they said, okay. Because we have said to you, we would like you to think about this, or this, or this. And to me, I don't feel like I know what the city's response is going to be. DPS is going to be on any of that stuff.
Yeah, the only thing I guess I'd end with is the commissioners will recall this. Over the course of 2 or 3 years, maybe pre-pandemic, if I'm
If we can think that far.
yeah, we had a whole series of proposals come in for the Manor Core building.
Right.
And there was a lot of arm wringing about should we tear a building down or should we renovate a building? And Becky remembers this. And I think we're all really proud of the outcome that came out of that, which was to say we saved a building, we built new structures, we connected new and old, and we did it in a way that I think is creative, in line with our goals and objectives here. And that's to say the initial proposal was to start whacking buildings and tearing things down. And so I think that positive recent outcome, along with our hesitation to approve or conceptually approve demolition in what seems like is too early for that approval. Sorry, I'm trying to spit my words out here. I think that's what you're hearing from us, especially when there's, an opportunity in Bank Street and some hesitation from the city to access the site from Front Street. So I think there's just too much kind of strangling us here to do much more than offer thoughts like you've heard this afternoon. I don't know if that was a good summary or not.
It is. I would say, Jeff, the Manor Core came to mind when I was put on here. I was involved with it. The difference there wasn't street that was the problem, it was public school to the east. And in reality, the condition was very similar. Where it started and where it developed over time became a much better project. But that's all of these, from my view, have an evolution. In this particular case, it seems to me, one of the things that's missing from the applicant, from us, is a reading from the city's public service, what's going to happen to the west, to Bank Street, until that's known. Running in circles a little bit.
Yeah.
In addition to what are the options they would approve?
Sure.
Yeah. What's the future of the historic building? What are the opportunities for site access? I think those are just so big weighing on us right now. I think we're just sort of stuck. So I guess with that, I ask us to put a wrap on this particular conversation today. Does that mean we're tabling, Connie, or if this is conceptual, we're?
I had this as conceptual.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sure, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you to the people who spoke.
Okay. We're still here. 5:30 p.m. And thanks to our next applicant for being patient. Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks to our next applicant. Okay, so I'll get us moving along here, but I'm passing this off to Cynthia. So I will say my goodbyes for today. And thank you to Cynthia. You're welcome.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
How are you?
It's seasonally warm.
We do appreciate appreciate the fact that we had to square with you guys on the schedule. Just go ahead and swear 'em in.
Yes.
Okay, so can I ask you to raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourselves and your affiliations, please?
I'm Dwight McCabe, principal with McCabe Companies. We are co-developer of the project.
Mr. McCabe?
Sam Rosenthal, architect, CEO of Sweet Caldwell. We are the architect of record and design architect for the project.
Mr. Rosenthal? We have two items on the docket. So we start with, make sure I got the right one. BD 22-04-01, 477 South Front Street. Temporary address parking. And Connie, you want to give us your perspective?
Yes, so an application for a new parking garage was conceptually reviewed in January and March. At the March business meeting, commissioners' comments included that the materials currently submitted have already been seen by the commission, and the commission feels the applicant should stick to the next meeting instead with new revised materials. The commission reiterated the outstanding materials listed by staff need to be submitted. And so I will just jump down here and say the ones that have been submitted are photo examples of sandblasted concrete surface finish, the precast bands, the buff finish, the physical brick samples. He's brought in the window frame finish, but not a window manufacturer physical example. If not listed on the approval list, we're not sure what that is. Things not submitted were in large part the exterior light fixtures and lumens and all that sort of stuff. For the site plan, including landscaping, bollards, or details. And the commission requested those, noting that based on experience for other properties and past projects, the lighting plan will be important.
So is therefore a conceptual review, Connie?
They had
We don't have
requested
all,
it.
we don't have all
I
the
didn't see it as being ready. The commission can disagree with me, and
But you believe it's ready?
I do not.
Oh, you
No, we're missing stuff. Is that a problem?
Important parts.
Important parts.
I mean, I think the commission could do something like additional approval.
And then with your approval of some of the other things.
The footprint, the general materials, whatever.
Lighting plan is lighting plan's pretty important. Would you like to walk us through your materials today, sir?
I'd be happy to.
Assuming you're going to be the primary speaker?
Yes. I want to start off, Joe, though, with a question of whether or not the renderings that were sent earlier this week by chance made it into the deck, because if not,
What day?
I believe it was Tuesday,
Yeah.
and it might not have. I have. They're fresh. That is what was submitted earlier.
So when I was not here and then you submitted by the required, it would have been Friday, last Friday.
And we were unable to get the renderings completed in time. I have fresh renderings that show a little bit more detail and more context. And if you'll permit me to bring them up.
That's up to the chair.
Sure.
Generally not recommended, but if the chair.
It's a trick I've used for
I'll let
decades.
you know this. Break it, you that for decades.
If I can make one comment, and it is relevant to the renderings and to the landscape component of this.
Is your mic on?
I think it's green.
Okay. We're having a hard time hearing you. That's better.
Okay, so part of the dilemma for this piece of this large project in terms of the landscape element is it's a very complex site in terms of that. And right. So one of the things we've been working to do is merge all of the various areas that are involved with this. And so as it happened, getting to where our consultant KSK was in a position to look exclusively at this particular piece of the project, that wasn't really able to happen this round until late last week. And so the renderings that you're seeing in front of you were actually produced by Cascade. So the landscaping that's shown there on the parking garage side of what will be Second Street is pretty accurate to what they're thinking. It's very straightforward and simple. There's some street trees and some grades on that side of the street, and there's some lawn space.
What about the lighting design?
Light design, we're not done, so clearly that needs to be added. But the balance of things at this stage of the project, we feel pretty confident that this is the direction we want to continue.
And that slide, the previous slide there represents, the one after that, represents the range of materials. The comment about window manufacturer, we're gonna bid this project out. It's gonna be a conventional aluminum mullion with a 2-inch by 4.5-inch dimension and an anodized black finish. So to say if it's an EFCO, a Connier, or YKK, I don't know that matters a whole lot.
I would say, I don't actually know the answer. I'm embarrassed I don't know the answer to this. Do we require an accepted window manufacturer for a modern building?
We
Modern parking structure?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
We generally do, but I mean, what is on the approved list is generally casements or double hungs.
Right.
So for something like this, if it's just going to be a custom built window, that's an industrial window. I mean, there are industrial windows that probably could be used for this, which we do have on the approved list. But if this is just like a manufactured window with just the mullions of glass, we would need, I like a shop drawing of that. Or something, something documenting them, not just, we'd like to trust you that they're going to look exactly like that.
So
I
it doesn't
think
have to be on the approved list, but we need
the
to see
chair
something.
has made comments before that, they've been disappointed in some windows that went in because they didn't get the details of.
Totally understandable, and this commission approved all the window replacement on the other building, which we sincerely appreciate.
Right.
I think in terms of getting shop drawing, we don't want to contract with somebody if we're not going to get approved. So there's a little bit of a dilemma there. But honestly, the mullions that are behind you right now on this building represent the type of structure that we're talking about. Really,
So a 2x4 mullion,
essentially.
Connier, one of those.
And if, because of the span, it ends up being 2.5 instead of 2, we'll come back to if we need to get that approved.
How about if you specify, just in writing for Connie, what you expect the specs to be?
Right.
And then once you've selected, bring it back and have her approve?
There's no measurements on that. The sample, there's nothing about the gauge of it. It's just those kind of details.
That's fair.
Could we call it a basis of design? Would that be
That sounds
if you
great.
select a window that you feel is appropriate and then.
And I believe that's actually on the drawings.
Okay.
that If you go back to the elevations.
I still want to make sure though, therefore, we are not requiring, since it's a modern parking structure, they use an approved window manufacturer.
I think the commission, the commission would have to say, maybe
Is-
even if it's a test case or.
Is there a
Or
precedent
the
for that?
special,
There is.
special condition or something like that.
Okay, so we would have to say as part of our approval that it was a
Yes.
special.
Even on the building on South High Street with Brett Parrish's, do you remember the one?
No.
And you approved a vinyl window, but it looked like an industrial window.
Yeah.
So.
We just have to be able to tell that story as part of the
Fair.
approval.
If we could go back to the east elevation. And actually that one right there says, so the window wall, YES 45 FS, black anodized frame, 2x4 mullion with low E glazing, just clear glass. That's,
Is that enough?
So, a detailed,
we can submit that detail for that system. Absolutely. And then the physical samples, there's the photo of the brick against the building.
Yeah, this one.
Right there. And what we found, that range was a bit too much. So what we really liked was the darker color in the brick that we highlighted as the primary, and then wanted to get a little bit of range to relate back to the existing without copying it. So this is our proposed range. And it's actually a thin brick product on the precast garage, but this is our intended product.
Why don't you bring it up? We don't like to touch it.
So your proposed range is a lot tighter than the normal things.
Because that version had too much dark brick in it.
Yeah, I agree.
At first, I thought with that picture, I thought that was an iron spot brick. You're spending a lot of money on a parking garage? Yeah.
That's good. Okay. You okay with it?
It's an end-to-cap product and the mix is specified on the board. We did request samples of the precast too, but production delays, shipping delays, they have not arrived yet. So
I'm pretty confident that it doesn't make sense for us to have staff approve the lighting plan. We're gonna want to see that. Is that fair? Is that fair? Okay, so you can bring it back when you come back with the lighting plan.
fine with that.
Okay.
And is it specifically for the garage?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're not.
Okay.
So with the caveat of the lighting plan being approvable, and our intent would be to use cutoff fixtures so we don't get any bleed. And we understand you're looking to make sure that the lighting doesn't go past the boundaries of the garage. The design itself, do we feel is something that would be approvable?
We've already been there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're there on
I think
that.
we've said that several times,
Just details.
unless
Got
there's
it.
something that you guys.
And the details may be right. We just need more documentation of those.
Okay.
Site plans.
We're happy to not have to see things multiple times.
Glad to see the street trees. I think that helps a lot to soften the whole thing. So,
Are you comfortable with the landscape plan?
yeah, the renderings, I think, make sense. So
You
it's
need to see more.
real brick for the crosswalks, right? So, yes, I think
That's our intention. Of course, that's always a discussion with the city staff. is
Understood.
they accept them.
Do you need to see a more detailed landscape plan before we can approve for the next meeting?
I think as long as the generally meets the rendering, I think.
If there's a different.
Okay, so if you can bring it, it would be great.
Final plans.
Yeah.
Might I offer that since you're very much going to see the entirety of the outdoor space plans, if we were to be able to conditional this particular piece of the project and bring it all at once and take care of all that in one shot, that might be, it might be easier to execute. One of the dilemmas we have with this is the city has discussed with us that our site compliance plan can evolve over time, so that what they've put in writing is they'll offer permits for various parts of the project before the full site compliance plan is done. And so getting the site compliance plan done so we can absolutely make sure that the landscaping aligns with that is a little ways off. And I doubt that it affects much on that side of Second Street, but it may. So just want to make sure we're not bringing a plan to you that in the end, I'm sure we come back sometime later and say, yeah, it's got to be a little different.
So you're suggesting that we approve the rest of the aspects of the building without having a final landscape plan?
With
But
the
having
condition that we have to
conceptual-
bring that to you. with the rest. Yeah, you have the conceptual,
That's
but we're bringing.
Okay.
Larger problem.
Good. All right. Everybody okay with that?
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Question on the window system on the east elevation. The grids are there. Is that all going to be no glass or glass?
grids on the,
East elevation, the one we're looking at.
that is no glass. The blue depicts
So in the brick section, that's no glass, just a grid.
open,
Okay,
open air to be able to get the ventilation.
Yep.
And,
that's why I'm asking.
Yes.
Make sure.
and the precast there is stained to proceed.
Yeah, I think we could approve that window system as a test case, just to make it clear that we're not.
We just remember this next time, Connie.
Yeah.
Test case. Okay, good. 'Cause I won't. Okay. Need anything else?
Set on that, thank you.
Everybody okay?
On to the addition then.
Yeah, hang on. That's gonna be the fun one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will move on. We've ended our conceptual comments for the garage. We'll move on to PD 22-04-002, which is 47-7 South Front Street, the addition. This was a fascinating presentation to try to walk through. I'm sure your explanation will help
All
a
right.
lot.
So
You want me to
Yes, please. Sorry, Connie.
just to go over basically, comments that were made at the business meeting. Commissioner appreciates the applicant's efforts that have been made for the project. Asked us to clarify what the use would be for the space at the upper levels of the additions, mechanical or other. Requested physical samples of the screening be brought to the commission hearing. Requested the written feedback received by the applicant, with Chabot, which was provided. Commissioner President noted that he thought the more transparent version of the addition previously proposed is more appropriate and in line with the city code and VEC guidelines. And just to note that in the, I'm not sure if this is the latest version that you wanted to be seen, but that the since this meeting, I think it was, 'cause I wasn't here.
Nor was
The roof was lowered and it's more glass, right?
it is.
And part of the conversation in the business meeting that was informative, I think, for most of us was the sense of the Connie equivalent, whose name I can't remember.
Was it Jack?
No, somebody else too.
Oh, Morgan? Morgan was also here.
Yeah. That, I think we thought it was the feds who were restricting you to brick, and we were all struggling with brick versus glass. We all have a strong preference for glass, and she said she did not believe that the local pushback would have an impact on the tax revenue. So that's why we wanted to see the letter, to see if we could possibly think through some of that a little more.
So there was some.
So if that wasn't conveyed to you, I apologize. We had asked that that be conveyed.
We were asked to share in the written response from the preservation folks.
And yours is a state response, right?
Well, it was the approved from both the state and federal.
Okay.
Because that, it's a single form,
So it's
right?
both, okay, all right.
That's it. I believe if you scroll to the front of, there's the approval from the federal reviewer, John Sandor, at the bottom line for the
Okay.
National Park Service, but then there's also, this is from the Preservation Office where everything gets routed first.
And my sense was this was the state, but maybe I'm wrong.
It's both,
Okay, the comments are both,
yes.
okay.
And we had Mr. Sandor at the facility for the walkthrough. And that was actually his direction first, and then Mary Angela Feaster was in support of the added masonry mass for the project.
And we know that you had an initial interest in something more glass, which is why we were all struggling with that. And as I said, I do not know, but we said we cared very much that you kept your tax break. We didn't want to screw with that, but we would love to see it. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think that was a group consensus head in a more glass direction.
So I offer that as context and just as proof that I'm not trying to.
No, we didn't think that. We wanted to shift, we wanted to see the language to see if there was, if it was finessible.
Sure.
Yeah.
If it's all right, if we could go to the slides and.
Yeah, looks like
jump
you
in.
explored a lot of stuff in them.
So the first slide there is in response to the request for some of the project metrics, and this is kind of across the board for the entire thing contextually, right? The garage there on the left-hand side, the west side, with the parking count of 354. This site plan is still, I'll call it a kind of a schematic level, but it depicts everything that we're trying to deal with, which includes stormwater retention and all those requirements as well. With the understanding that we're there on the garage after everything else, moving across in the middle, the west block portion, as we call it, there are 42 residential units slated to go in there. There's food and beverage service at the lower level in that dark blue area, which is said to be a sort of event space, kind of tap room, and there'll be office spaces above that, and then loft apartments in the south portion of the building. And then on the east block, there's currently planned 30 residential units, but it's predominantly an office building with a little bit of retail food and beverage service. Based on some of the market conditions right now, that those 30 units might go away and become just more leased office space. So that's simply market condition. Either way, it does not affect the form or the design of the addition itself. So I wanted to just start with the metrics for context. When this whole effort started with the revision on the addition, we brought in this design. You heard, so this is just meant to kind of go back to the beginning and talk about the evolution. So from here, next slide, please. What we really heard that we need to address was the corner condition and the articulation of the facade. I think we're going to kind of burn through these pretty quickly. Next slide, please. So we talked about an architectural approach, and we talked, next slide, please, a sculptural approach, and next slide, please. We kind of explored that from a massing standpoint. So we've said, you know, hey, something like this, but not necessarily that, for just a graphic approach. Next slide, please. So looking at the footprint, next slide. We also then looked at moving the building and what impact that would have, and we thought that that really covered up some of the nicest features of the restored brewery. Next slide, please. But there's the siding of it. Next slide. Then, just to do our homework, we looked at splitting this up. Next slide. And looking at kind of the relationships that created, but it didn't really solve the problem for the corner presence, and it created additional structures that were harder to deal with. Next slide, please. So we started looking at maybe a combination of sculpture and stepping. Next slide, please. And that's kind of what that looked like. Next slide, please. But with the development of this concept, we felt pretty confident that the siding of the building stepping back and up, as shown in that massing, coupled with a corner feature that could also provide circulation, was a good approach. And I think conceptually we had some buy-in here. Next slide, please. So we started to develop this, and we created what you've seen before, which was too static, but again, just the development of the world. So next slide, please. We looked at some of the detailing. We'd introduced the concept of the eyebrow, just for reference, taking the same brick color family. I want to use even the darker tone for that eyebrow feature, but related back to the samples you saw. Next slide, please. We were going to have the same kind of aluminum storefront system, but using the polished mahogany color that's on the historic windows to make that relationship. We talked about creating a gasket to separate the new from the old. Next slide, please. And then we looked at some of the articulation of the portal itself. We heard comments about the veneer base, wanting to have a little bit more articulation and finish, and just really kind of trying to dress this up some more. Next slide, please. So we looked at this and contextually around the site, and I've mentioned some of the challenges with the rooftop equipment that we needed to screen. That's where we got into the bubble concept. Next slide, please. And again, we've already seen this. Next slide, please. We looked at the materials and talked about trying to pull some of those darker tones. that's what set up the exploration to get these samples. And what we'd like to do is use the boards that you saw with the accent color here. And we think that the more rectilinear brick, we want to get these in actual bricks and not thin bricks, but that these bricks are going to make the whole thing relate better from the garage to the addition, and that this color range is going to be appropriate. So that's what that study was about. Next slide, please. Again, looking at the mechanical screening. Next slide. This is where we went immediately after our last discussion was, well, let's study the bubble concept a little bit. And honestly, we couldn't make enough bubbles to cover all the equipment. So we looked at maybe raising a roof up and creating what is honestly a ton of spandrel glass and not really solving the problem. But this was part of the exploration. And by the way, it blocks a ton of windows too in the existing building.
Right.
But you can see on the right-hand side, the corner there, the bubble articulation, bringing that screen across. That was the study. And next slide, please. It's a lot of bubbles. We kind of had to try it out. I had fun with it. It ain't that.
I'm glad.
That I think as a folly, it's great, but as a functional piece of gateway architecture, it's not that. So next slide, please. That's when we began to look at refining the concept. And now you'll see that the massing went back to the stepped up version. By doing that, we're able to really screen the equipment. We're able to keep some of that original architecture definition that we had. But what we did is the northern bays, we combined those windows into larger glass openings to really play with the scale and the rhythm and create something that we feel is more attuned with what we all want for more transparency, but still lets us have some of that brick that Chippo might let us get through. And then you'll see at the end, the portal itself, we've kind of thinned up the proportions on it. I think we're going to need to raise it up a little bit higher, but you'll also see the addition of a pyramid on top there, and that's about a skylight. Because next slide, please. We'll get into some of the articulation there, but you'll see the bubble concept come back up. Here on the south elevation, we looked at breaking up the massing a little bit and kind of expanding the width of the addition and creating that little gasket there so that it's more of a cohesive statement rather than having that wide piece of glass and then the building. So we feel like proportionally this is doing what it needs to, and it provides a great entryway and a nice simple frame. Next slide, please. Here's just a more close-up view of the facade of the elevation itself. And I think the one addition that you're seeing there is sort of in the middle where we've got the vision glass at the rooftop level for the rooftop bar. That feature is now a little bit more prominent and set aside. And I think that because of functionally what it is, that Shippo will give us a little bit of leeway with that portion of the structure. Plus, we have the mass of the masonry landing the building at grade.
Is that a patio of the bar as well?
It is. There's rooftop access. Next slide, please. On the north end, we're kind of going all in on the glass as it relates to the lower garden portion and just a simple masonry frame there. Pretty straightforward. And then you're seeing the red band there is the top of the rooftop bar area, and then behind it is just a little bit of screening for the mechanical equipment. Next slide, please. This is where at the portal, the entryway, we've created a lay light of the bubble. So we didn't lose that concept. We're keeping that. And then the pyramid, that's simply how we're controlling water. That feature up there, it's just like the skylight installed over Derby Court at the museum. So you're able to create a nice large opening. In this case, this is roughly 8 foot by 8 foot, which gives us a lot of transparency and allows that bubble to really kind of show up.
But this is not the only place that the bubble is, right?
It is, but what we'd like to explore is whether or not that railing on the stair and then also the grate or rather the gate material, could also be the bubble as well, so that it's entirely part of the portal experience as you're going down the stairs, that railing is bubbles as well. Next slide, please. So this is the massing view and kind of crude rendering from the south end that shows all of that contextually. Next slide, please. And then kind of from the north corner, this is more what we expect to see without vegetation. Next slide, please. And then, as we talked a little bit about the bricks and materials there. And next slide, please. So time was tight to get everything in by Monday, and my rendering was a little weak, and we have updates here that I'll be happy to pass along if you'll allow it. Next slide, please. Again, kind of a crude rendering showing that in context with the sort of shifting color. Next slide.
Look at the ladders. Can you back up? The ladders around the portal.
That's just a rendering thing. So that's where we're thinking it'll be the bubble grate. This rendering that I have, it shows it more like wrought iron.
You're being a bad boy today.
We've had supply chain issues from the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
We're only gonna keep accepting that for so much longer.
So rather than have it be conventional pickets, we're thinking that can be the bubble. But it's meant to be black metal rather than whatever.
Then the white ladders.
Right. And that's just a specular reflection thing from the rendering software that as a draft, I mean, I'm happy to get into it, but it was just the wrong mapped material.
One thing we did talk about after seeing that idea, the white piece above, was maybe we start the bubbles at the top and work them down to some point. So it's like the froth on the top of the beer. That could be a better way to do it, and then simplify the gates.
Do you guys like the bulbs? Do you?
I love the bubbles.
We got used to the bubbles. And in this context, as a pavilion, we think that's a delightful thing to do. Trying to
Because I
make
have
a
to say the
whole-
New Orleans versions of bubbles scared the crap out of me. Do you guys agree? The last one was like a forest of.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You guys.
One thing we also, because kind of building to this, we saw in this approach is we were concerned about the fact that this is a historic manufacturing campus. And putting an addition on here that didn't reflect that industrial component, whether it's period or not period, we still felt like that was an important thing to do. The expanding glass, we think, actually helped that. The other thing it does, and the renderings maybe show a little bit better, because of the slope of the sidewalk, when you're at the northern end of the new addition, you're literally looking eyeball to eyeball with folks that are going to be on the inside of that space. So if we actually look to do a glazing that's more transparent, the engagement with the street is going to be really strong right there. So we like that, and we also like that in the lower garden area, same thing. There will be real connectivity with the activity in that building, with the activity outside the building. That's what more glass does for you. Like that. And then it also, I don't know, any of these renderings show it well, but on the existing building, on that north end, those big openings will be replaced. They're closed up today. They'll be replaced with glass. We would like to see the same pattern of glass used on that end of the building, so it starts to tie that industrial element.
So I think the rooftop bar idea is great because it'll activate the massing. So I think that's a big improvement. And I think the concern with the previous iterations of the corner was just that would be a dark space and kind of uncomfortable. So I think the skylight really, helps with that. And then just the structure feels a lot less massive, which I think is a good improvement. And how you do the bubbles and the fence, I think that's a cool idea. I know that that's tricky with code and everything, opening size, but think that's an interesting idea to explore. If you can't get it to work for the entire thing, I think that's okay, as long as there's touches with, kind of hinting at that in these places.
Yeah, we even talked about some of the railing along the sidewalk, maybe we intersperse
Right.
that, scene, not the whole thing, just in spots. One last comment, yes, I want to make was the whole screening concept. I hate rooftop screens. It's just that you know what they are. And so from early on, and you go all the way back to the original rendering, we kind of looked to how can we extend the building out and just mask that it doesn't appear to the screen. So that's part of
For the stuff on top of the roof?
yeah, so that's back to why we've gone back to now making this look more like a 3-story building. In fact, it's a 2-story building. It just solves that problem.
The step roof situation improves that solution so much.
Yeah.
And then you're increasing spacing of the glass. The increased amount of glass improves it too. I like the idea of the rooftop bar. The little corner pavilion still bugs me, but
it's better.
It's better.
I
It's
make
definitely
it
better.
bigger, it's better. I like the illustrations back that it's not also regular.
Yeah.
I like the differentiation. I would really like to see, and I know you've had supply chain issues, but to see that. I don't have a sense of what the rendering on the bottom in the garden looks like, or in the downstairs looks like, looking up at this. Do we have that?
Not in this package.
Okay.
We do have some renderings, but it's more like in the space looking back at the building.
Yeah, I want to feel like I'm down there looking at all this stuff around me and understand how it feels.
Mhm.
Is that possible for next time?
The pavilion side as well, like a 360 view.
Whatever you can do. I don't feel like I understand what's down there or how it relates to the other building. And the other thing is this feels prison-like to me with verticals. But
That's why bubbles are better.
Bubbles are coming back. Yeah.
air frothing thing is fascinating. They could come up with some great nickname, be a landmark. I do really feel like expanding the portal has improved it substantially. Do I still love it? Be strong, but I think it's a lot better. I like the other building a lot. What about you guys?
And the other building is definitely, I love the big windows and that massive turnout. You mentioned you were probably thinking about making it taller, the portal. Like what you mentioned.
Maybe like another 1'4", just another little stack higher.
Right.
Just there's something I feel like it just isn't quite tuned right in terms of the width to the height.
You want to show the whole pyramid?
Pull it up a little bit.
No. I'm asking if you want to show less pyramid or more pyramid. I'm trying to figure out. Is it deliberate? You're trying to show most of it?
We're trying to show off a good portion of it because I think it's important that you kind of get the opportunity for some reflections.
Feels
Something
like that
about-
needs to echo somewhere too.
Well, you notice the turret. on
Yeah,
the
good
original
call.
building,
That's
full-
completely.
A full hip. roof.
Thank you.
Maybe the portal needs to have a bigger, full looking glass. Something.
You can raise the curve and you'll see more width of it. Right
Yeah.
now, it's clipping.
Well, that would be another one.
To raise the curve.
Could really
Black
have
of
it.
it just really kind of scratchy.
Scale wise, the little glass pyramid looks a little wimpy.
That's why I was asking. I don't hide it or.
I appreciate the north wall being all glass dropping down
Yep.
into the pit.
Yep.
It's definitely
Yeah.
a nice touch.
I think the addition of the glass is really nice, and how reflective it is. So going to be, it's going to be great. I really appreciate you taking the time and walking through the timeline of the evolution of this, because I haven't been here.
That's right.
And so, it was great to see like where you were, how you got to where you are. And then I also appreciate you bringing these copies. I know it's not the legal thing to do. However, I was gonna make a comment about the rooftop bar and that red band and how that did look good. It was in this rendering, but in this one the paper one that you provided is white and it fits in a lot better. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the red. Yeah, but I agree with my colleagues, in regards to the pyramid and making it more to scale. It does seem kind of small, given the size of the top of the perimeter of that.
Not sufficiently celebratory.
Correct. Yes, that, as she has put it. But yeah, it looks really good. And y'all have done a wonderful job listening to everyone's comments and responding. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think the landscape part, being a landscape architect, I appreciate that. It's gonna, the trees and the vegetation in the courtyard will soften everything up, and that would be really important, so.
I also really feel like the building is showcased with this massing in a way that it wasn't before.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I think it's great. So how's that? Awesome people.
I'm a little hurt about the red though.
I'm okay with the red. I love the red.
There's the,
It's all taste.
sort of the tinner's red that we used on the, at the top line, and I think that red's a little red.
Okay.
Yeah, that stops
Okay.
at red. Do you see the tinner's red on the original, building?
You do in a few spots.
Okay.
And we have some soffits and some great rafter details that have been painted red. And actually now it's starting to get nice out and we're almost back to normal. We'd be happy to let you all experience what it's like down in that pit, but then also to see the quality of the restoration work.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So not that red, but
Okay.
reddish.
We have 3 people who can.
You just walk in.
I've been, but now that was for a landmarks.
Yes, no, if you'd like the tour, we'd love to arrange that. So send an offering out there.
This is a question for a future meeting, I'm sure, but like the tenant signage and those types of things is the intent to have those incorporated into the new building, or just curious, like the other elements that you'll see on the facade?
Yeah, if I could speak to that a little bit. So that, yeah, there's a whole nother layer. You talked about lighting. This is a real critical element for what we're talking about here. So we've got work to do to get there. From a signage point of view, philosophically, how we'd like to look at it. So go back to the corner view there. We kind of like the idea of those brick knee walls that are on either side of the pavilion to have some kind of incorporated, it's timeless, right?
Kind of give a visual base to the corner.
So those will be there and some kind of simple groundlet shadowing of those. So for the project, that's one place where the project will get identified. But again, it's called front and full, so it may just say front and full, which is what it is. And then what we'll look at is we've got the entrances into the Brewer's Alley, just to the south of the building, and we have the entrance into Ludlow at the north side of the building. We've had ideas of doing something that's more catenary or something above. We haven't gotten fully to that yet, but the idea is that it's a little bit celebratory. Here's a portal coming here, so we're thinking of that. The other thing we'd like to do, which this is where we get into the SHPO discussions and National Park Service discussions. We would like to do applied signage, so painted signage on brickwork that's got historical flair to it. We don't know how far we'll get with that. As you know, there's a 5-year window of if they say no, 5 years later, we can come back and do something different. So there's thoughts of that. Now there's another way around. We could also, at least for nighttime, we could do laser projected signage, those kind of things that replicates that. Particularly, if you look, we've got a big facade down there for the garden area. We definitely want to use that as a backdrop. We have a similar facade on Ludlow on the west side of this block of buildings. We'd like to use that.
I really like that.
And so that's kind of, we'd like to have this signage be more animated than just a static sign.
I was in, I'm sorry, can I take 1 minute, you guys, tell in terms of story? I was in Florence a couple of years ago at the Pizza in the Medici Palace, and we happened to have dinner on the plaza the night that they were doing a Cirque du Soleil set of scaffolding against the Medici Plaza and a light show. And it was astonishing. I mean, the number of people who came, I felt like I was in a movie. The number of people who came, the celebratory nature. They had just finished cleaning up the David statue, the replica in that square. And it just, the whole thing was an amazing experience. When you talk about flashing stuff on the walls, I see something like that with music as well as some of the art stuff that could be a real neighborhood anchor.
There's actually an app for that these days. So
Is there?
you can set this up and people can flash their own signage. They can, it's like a jukebox. You can use your phone as a jukebox. Those kinds of ideas we very much talk about.
I think the vibrancy part and to immediately establish that, as you're coming from downtown, you're going past the jail and parking garage, not so great. So the more that you can say you've arrived at the Brewery District
Right.
with really great signage and other things, the better.
I mean, maybe we don't have David.
Yeah.
But I think the pyramid thing, I think you should celebrate it more elsewhere. I think if you're going to use it, and the bubbles for that matter, use it.
So when you're in Florence, did you see all three Davids?
No, I didn't. We only had a day and a half. Sorry, it's a personal conversation. I frankly was so transfixed by the Uffizi, I could not drag myself out of the first 5 rooms.
I was stunned with that. That told me David was a subcontractor, right? He
Right,
was.
exactly.
And so when there were 3 of them, there's one up on the hill that overlooks the river, and there's one in the plaza, and there's.
I just need to go visit. Post-pandemic retirement plan. But it was extraordinary, and I have never experienced anything like that here. I'd love to do it. Sorry, were you?
Say as staff, who, involved with
Yes,
new
ma'am.
signing.
Yes.
To make sure that you're looking at the guidelines.
But if it's flashable, that makes it easy.
I'm hearing it very.
Well, the danger in that is people will see that, and I agree, I think it could be very interesting for the neighborhood too.
Right.
But the danger in that is someone else misapplying that idea
Yes, you're right.
down the road. And it becomes
Crazy.
kind of like suburbia billboards and stuff, too much.
Maybe it only can be done on projects in excess of $70 million.
A little targeted. Cool.
Well, we
Right.
greatly appreciate Spons tonight. We're feeling much better right now about where things are headed. There was just an announcement this morning. Our neighbor space, the old ice house, is now filled.
Great.
With a tremendous tech client. We're bringing 200 people in there. So we're happy that that peace competition is closed up.
Good.
And they're a great companion tenant for what we have. We actually have a couple of folks that are well into looking at designing their spaces in this building. So those 2 things were great triggers. So it's important for us to get your support so we can get this to a real plan.
We want this to be great.
Yeah, I would love to go on a tour, see what you've done at some point.
Well, we can coordinate that through the city.
And thanks for the timeline of your design development.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so any other discussions, ladies and gentlemen? I hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Nobody can speak.